record this. So when we're looking at univariate, it's a kind of analysis of a single variable. Normally, we're looking for if there is to determine a trend or pattern, okay? Might call it a behavior, spelt in the English way, that kind of stuff. So just a single, and all we're looking for is there a kind of something happening? So like you said, if you're collecting money, has the amount of money I've got changed over time? See, you know, do I get more money 1 month compared to another? That kind of thing, right? And normally then, quite often with univariate data, we're looking at frequency. Yeah. So, like they've said, how many, why would we be interested, by the way, in how many of different coins we've got? Pause there. Recording on. So guys, you read about the different types of data. So we have qualitative and quantitative, not the easiest things to say. And within quantitative, there are discrete and continuous. And then discrete data, you will have read, is basically stuff that is counted, and continuous data is stuff that will be measured. All right. Could you maybe give me an example or other words that link in with the qualitative and quantitative that might help you remember?
I just remember that quantitative is like, it has quantity in it.
Yes, I like that. So that would be a quantity. And what would you do maybe with qualitative? What something would your ideal partner have? So qualities, as in what kind of traits does it have, rather than how many of something, okay? So when you quantify something, you are telling me how much of something you have. All right? When you talk about its qualities, you're talking about kind of a property of it, like is it blue or that kind of thing. Yeah. Have you come up with a reason? Well, what does counted and measured mean? So discrete and continuous. How would you come up with if you had to explain that to someone? With an example, for instance.
For measured, I would just say, kind of what they said in the book, like the simple way would be like if you go to the doctor's office and you get measured your height or
yeah.
the weight or something like that. And then counted is more just like how many marbles are there in a jar or whatever.
Yeah. That's it. So if you're collecting data, just think about how you would go about doing it. Yeah. So if you are just counting how many giraffes walk by the front of your house in the morning, you're counting the number of giraffes. If you are looking at how tall is a giraffe, then you're going to measure that. So what kind of things are you going to measure? What units? So weight, you've already talked about. Height. Depth, yeah. Time, yeah, it's different. Actually, that's a good one to talk about. Do we measure time? Or do we count time? There's a TOK question
Yeah.
to take to someone, isn't it? Do you measure or count time? I genuinely, that's the first time I've ever come up with that one. There you go, answer that one. Do I, because I count down the minutes. Yeah, but with continuous data, when you measure something, why is that word continuous there for something you measure? So do you know what discrete means? If you do something discretely,
it's not as noticeable, and it's like.
if I said to you, I need you to tell Emily she left far too early yesterday, but do it discreetly, what would you do?
I would tell her, but like I wouldn't be like, Mr. Potts said for me to tell you that blah blah blah. I would just be like, yeah. I would just say it. I don't know how to describe it.
I would take her to one side, away from people. Yeah, if you do something discreetly, you do it away from.
Alone.
Yeah, so discrete data is standalone stuff that is like one thing does not overlap another. Continuous data is stuff that just blends continuously. So why is someone's weight? I won't say someone because that causes a bit of issue. Why is mass in science, for instance, a continuous data measurement? What is something's mass? What is it measured in? Yeah, it could be.
Is that still mathematical? Yeah. Well, it can. I don't know if like an object, but at least a person, it can increase or decrease. Like it can change.
But let's assume I'm going to weigh you now. It's not going to change in that time.
Yeah.
But what could I do? Well, I tell you what I could do. I could weigh you to I'm going to use my metric units. Weigh you to the nearest kilogram. But like my scales at home, I weigh myself to the nearest tenth of a kilogram. If I wanted to be more accurate, I could weigh it to a hundredth of a kilogram. So, for instance, continuous data, I could have something that is 13 kilograms, but it could also be 13.2 kilograms, but 13.28 kilograms.
Yeah.
You get the idea. So we are talking accuracy here, and then if something is 13 kilograms, something else is 14 kilograms. Well, I don't know whether this is actually 13.9682 kilograms. There is no point at which one stops and then there's a gap and then there's the other one. Yeah. However, discrete data, okay, I could say, well, this is one for you. Something that is it's a difficult one to explain, but shoe size compared to foot length. So if I were to measure your foot, I'd measure it in centimeters, yeah? And it could be 23.21743, as accurate as I could possibly get, limited only with my tools. So foot length would be continuous data, but shoe size
would be discrete because it's only.
You are a
Like,
6 or a 6.5.
Yeah, there's no like 6.3.
Exactly, or a 7 or so there are definite gaps, and if you are, that's why, you might be too small for one, it's sometimes it can be awkward because. And why do they do it? Why isn't shoe size set up as continuous? Why can't you go in and have the exact shoe size for your feet?
Everyone's not everyone, like most people would be different, so it would be like more effort
Yeah, no, it is, isn't it? I bet you can do it. You can go in and you can have shoes specially made if you've got that kind of money and you want it. All right, people do, sportsmen do. You know, Cristiano Ronaldo will have his boots specially made for him, so they're perfect. You know, but the rest of us go, I'm just a 6.5. Give me that. It works. It's fine. I'm going to put socks on that are thin today. I'll put thick socks on tomorrow. That affects it, you know. So shoe size is actually discrete data, all right, because there's gaps. And it's about how we display these things, all right. So we've got those qualitative, quantitative, discrete, continuous. Are they counted? Are they measured? So let's have a quick look at those questions that you were on. So what did you make for number of apples in a bag?
I said discrete.
Yeah, because
there's
you count them. Yeah.
You just count them.
Right. So, but we would then say discrete and quantitative because we're how many of them. Yeah. The weights of students in grade 6. Continuous, I'd go with that. The number of blue cars in a parking lot. Is it quantitative or qualitative? So if you're going to tell me that it's discrete, it's quantitative, isn't it? And discrete. Because we are counting the football boot sizes of a football team. Quantitative and we would say discrete. The number of visitors to the Tower of London. Still counting. And so on. Right. Could you, none of these at the moment are qualitative. Did you get the example of what qualitative would mean?
Well, something like not given numerically, which is why it's not really any of those because they're all counting or
counting up.
numerical.
Yeah, so there's numbers involved. So what was the example in the book that they gave? Yeah, for example, favourite ice cream flavour. So if I wanted to ask a question, I go around, what's your favourite ice cream data? Could that be turned into quantitative?
Yes, if you said like 2 out of the 3 of us like chocolate.
So I would start going, how many people? And that would be like, how many blue cars are in the parking lot? I could turn that into quantitative by saying how many people liked the chocolate, how many, you know, but in just my data collection, if I've asked someone, you know, how many times did you buy chocolate ice cream? I'd be collecting quantitative. But if I said, what is your favourite flavour? I would be asking them qualitative data. Okay. So what we need to know is that kind of data because we need to know how to deal with it in certain ways. So when we start, if it's discrete, for instance, working out the averages and things like that, we've got to do it in a certain way. If we're representing that data on charts and graphs, we've got to do it in a certain way so that we can understand, yeah? So do you remember what the point was of displaying data again? So we're representing our data and we're doing it in such a way because we're trying to be what? Valid, yeah? We've got to validate our conclusions and what we're talking about. Okay? Should we? So are you okay with that? Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Let me just ask you about question 2. It says construct a frequency table for that data. How do you feel about that? If I asked you to construct a frequency table.
Well, after looking at, I read the example above.
Yeah.
This helps.
Say it again, sorry. No, just constructing the frequency table before we even do mean, median, or mode. That's all it is.
Okay.
Just putting it in a table. So, for instance, what have they done in that example?
They've said like, it's boys. Yeah, boys ages between. It says more than 10, less than like 11. So
So it's
basically,
that word, isn't it?
10 and
Between. So what have they
Between.
done? They've done grouped data.
Yeah.
Why would you group data?
So that you can find a more accurate.
No,
No. Valid.
we can do that without grouping it.
Yeah.
In fact, the word accuracy, if I don't group my data, then I've got, like, the raw data that we call is the most accurate situation. I know exactly what I've got. Look at that table in example 1. I've got all of the numbers, right? If I look at the table below, what have they basically done? So they've said between 10 and 11, okay? So for this example, what does the 7 in 10 to 11 actually mean?
There are 7 boys who are that age.
Okay.
In that age.
What was it necessary to group it?
They don't really say if they're trying to find out like. I don't know.